There are 7 of Barry Levy's works in a long corridor on view at Dia Beacon. Not completely distinct from each other, they are always in conversation. Chalk, felt, metal, glass, cutting, placing, rolling, folding, stacking, breaking, and if I may add another, sounding. These works all evoke a sonic interpretation, from the sound of their making to an imagined sound. They could be interpreted as music scores, a notational instruction where ball bearings or pieces of felt stand in for musical notes. They bring to mind visual scores of John Cage or Max Neuhaus. Other work of his has a more typographical effect, where the forms could be interpreted as punctuation, a physical and spatial interpretation of language that make me think of volume and cadence, aspects I consider in my own work as a visual artist working between sound and language. I came to know Dia as an artist educator, working with students of all ages and public programming. A teaching strategy that stands out is with a group of second graders. When considering how to work with the challenging concept of ambiguity, we introduced the word itself, ambiguous. I was thinking about this quote by William James. We ought to say a feeling of and, a feeling of if, a feeling of but, and a feeling of by, quite as readily as we say a feeling of blue or a feeling of cold. The ambiguity in the work of Barry Levy, its mutability and flux, is what draws me to it. The work at the entrance of the corridor, two becoming one, here to there, here from there, is the work that strikes me the most, and something that I experienced at Dia for the first time. I love how it invites the viewer to consider the interplay between waves, as sonic, as ocean, as a greeting. It was made by blowing chalk dust in bodily movements that bring to mind a conductor directing a silent orchestra. Chalk is a material used in writing, often in classrooms, and its origins are the ocean, a limestone composed mainly of calcium carbonate from the shells of tiny marine animals and algae. Rocks are records of events that took place at the time they formed. They are books. They have a different vocabulary, a different alphabet, John McPhee suggests. The writing drawing of Hannah Darboven and the wave-like lines of Irma Blank come to mind. The lines in Materiality suggest an unspoken language, an embedded voice. Agnes Martin invited her viewers to look at her work as though you're looking at the ocean, a world without objects, without interruption or obstacle, going into a field of vision as you would cross an empty beach to look at the ocean. Liquidity is a principle of language. Language must be filled with water, Bachelard posed in his book Water and Dreams. But this is the opposite of the sea, a desert perhaps, or the moon. In the sea around us, Rachel Carson writes, there is to this day a great scar on the surface of the globe. The scar depression holds the Pacific Ocean. According to some geophysicists, the floor of the Pacific is composed of basalt, the substance of the Earth's middle layer, while all other oceans are floored with a thin layer of granite. We immediately wonder what became of the Pacific's granite covering, and the most convenient assumption is that it was torn away when the moon was formed. Everything only connected by and, writes Elizabeth Bishop in A Cold Spring. She continues, at low tide like this, how sheer the water is. White, crumbling ribs of marl protrude and glare, and the boats are dry, the pilings dry as matches, absorbing rather than being absorbed. Chalk forms a fine-grained marine sediment known as ooze. When I visited with my 2-year-old daughter, she exclaimed, stuff. It's precisely this stuff, the substance without category, the ooze, where this work resides, in a precarious interstitial zone. Which brings me back to the title. Two becoming one, here to there, here from there. In writing with, from, and for others, Maggie Nelson begins, for a long time I worried there was something wrong with me as a writer because I leaned so heavily on the thinking and writing of others. And further, that instead of wanting to hide that leaning, my impulse has often been to showcase it, to make this thinking with others, this weaving of mine and others' words, part of the texture of my writing. In my own work, I do this too. And perhaps this is what Levy presents to us, particulates and materials in conversation, inviting us to consider the fragment and the whole, the wave and the ocean, the note and the song, the process and the residue, you and me here and there. I'll end with this short excerpt from a slide poem that was first shown at the Poetry Project, created with 2 slide projectors, side by side, as if pages in a book, in a shared space of collective reading. Crystalline interiors, lunar frequencies, between speech but not spoken. Oh, to mouth the moon. Aqueous channels eroding, faceted secrets, electric deserts, erratic boundaries, fierce buoyancy. The page as sanctuary, the fragment as portal. A lavish absence to retreat into. There, hush, ashore.